Hello, in this video I'll show you how to solder the new beefed up power supply plus minus 12 volts and 5 volts. So what you get in the bag is the bigger power supply board with space for two 4700 microfarad capacitors instead of the smaller 470 microfarad which was on the older board. So here's a comparison to the smaller version 1 board, and this is the version 2. So if you just need a small one, maybe this is enough, but as soon as you build something bigger, then you need, or many modules, then you will need a bigger power supply, like this one. Also in this one, you get one of these Eurorack power rail connectors if you want to connect a flying bus board or any other bus board with this kind of connector, or you can just, as usual, you also get a whole strip of 40 of these because my time is too precious to put them in smaller batches. So you get a whole strip of these, and you can use these as before, just using the plus 5 volts and plus 12 volts ground and minus 12 volts, just with DuPont cables. But again, I can only recommend to actually use this the dedicated power bus, because it really keeps the things in place. So except for some beefed up components, it is quite the same. Or you also get a power connector if you need one of those, or if you have one of those, then this is good. You can just connect that and add. It makes adding power a bit more easier. The rest is the same. We have the LED, the diodes, we have a few more diodes and a few more capacitors, because we have the plus 5 volts also, or 5 volt regulator. So let's add these in place, shall we? We begin with the diodes. There's 3 of those, and same as before, there is a line on the silk screen where the line on the component should be. So there's a gray line on this black diode, and there's a line there. So D3, like so, and D4 is the other way. So we turn that way, and I believe this is D1 over here, where the gray line should be towards the 7805. The LED, so the long leg is plus and the shorter leg is negative or minus ground, and the long leg should be up towards the resistor and towards the power up there. Still have a very beefy resistor. Needs to be placed a bit slanted like that. Direction doesn't matter. AC alt is alternative. If you don't have one of these power supplies and you just have 2 cables with AC current or AC power you want to put in here, then just use these 2. Or of course you can use any of these terminals up here as well. There is no button or power button in this design either. So either you just add a jumper cable here, or if you want, you add a power button out to a panel of some kind. So let's begin solder these in place. All holes are through plated, so it really doesn't matter which side of the PCB you solder on. I usually solder one leg on this side just to keep them in place, and sometimes I do the rest on the back side, or just do them all on this side. It really doesn't matter. So the smaller capacitors, we should have 3 1 microfarads, and that is these really small ones. And capacitors, electrolytic ones, look like this. You have a short leg with a white stripe with minus on them, and then you have a long leg with no stripe. So the long leg is plus, and if you look at the silk screen, you see there's a plus sign, and on the other side there is a white marking, and that should correspond to the negative white marking. So long leg to the plus sign, and long leg to the plus, and long leg to the plus sign. Then we have this one to 20 microfarads. That's for the 5 volts. And again, long leg to plus and white to white. And just to make it easier to solder, I leave that out. These small capacitors can be a bit tricky because the solder pads are also really small. So if you have a big thick soldering iron like I do, it is a bit difficult to get in there sometimes. Like this one. Come on. These are good to just check so you have no overlap over these soldered points, because they are so small and so very close to each other. It's good to make that extra check on that. So now we add the big 220 capacitor microfarad. Plus to plus, white to white. Before we add the really tall ones, we can, if you want this one, you can add this. If you want just pin headers, you add these, because once the taller components get in place, it is a bit difficult to get those in place. So I'm going to do red line along this side, and that means that you have a small arrow on this package, and that should be towards the red line. Because then when you get a cable, the red line and that slot goes in like so. Right, so now we can add the power regulators. 7805 over there, 7912 down there, and 7812 there. Again, adding just one leg, just so we can to hold it in place, and then we can make sure they're aligned correctly. We want these to be straight, because if we want to add heat sinks, it's usually good to have them standing straight. And depending on what leg you attached, the leg is also attached to the heatsink already on there, which you hold your finger on, so you might burn yourself if you use the wrong pin. Oh, so the holes are a bit big on that one for the 7805. Maybe not perfect. Again, for the heatsink, it is good to have them somewhat in line, like so. And let's solder the rest. And we got that. And after doing this, the heat sinks are warm, so be careful when you handle them right now. Alright, another short component. I want to use this one, so I need to add that one. We just add a support below it. And it should work quite well. So, everything in place except the big fat capacitors. Again, this is an electrolytic small one with a minus white stripe, and the taller one is plus, or longer one is plus. So we put the longer one in the one with the plus sign, and white against white. And the same here. And as you can see, they should be opposite each other. And we solder this in place. And that should be it. 20 minutes, 19 minutes on the clock, so it really should be quite simple to solder this together. Of course, we need to make sure it actually works, so let's do that. And I did the classic mistake of forgetting to add this little jumper, which I talked about in the beginning, which was very important if you don't have a switch, which I don't. So need to add this. Right, so now we can connect a power supply. So this is an AC-AC adapter. This is what you're supposed to be using. In this case, primary doesn't matter. That matters for your region, so that's the mains voltage, 230 volts. The secondary is 12 volt, and a squiggly line means, or a sinus curve, means AC, alternating current. If you got a line and a dotted line, that does not work. That is an AC-DC adapter. So if it says AC-DC adapter, it doesn't work. It needs to be AC-AC, 12 volts, AC, squiggly line. All right, so very important. So we connect this here, and I don't have the mains power on yet, and we start that now. And the LED turned on and nothing seems to be burning up. And we get our voltage meter in here. We connect it to, set it to, so here's that line with a dotted line I talked about, V. So this is DC. And that is what we have out of this one, is DC voltage. So we should have plus 12 volts. So the ground pins are all these pins down here. And if we take the red line, this should be minus 12 volts. And that is correct, minus 12 volts. And those are ground, and that should be plus 12 volts. And that should be plus 5 volts. And we got perfect voltages. Sorry about that. So about 20 minutes with a few minutes extra to just error check this, and we have a very good power supply for a modular system to power a few more modules than this smaller one, which works for small projects, not when you, here's a finished one, but if you want a big modular system, I would go with a beefier one like this, or just beef these small capacitors up with big ones like that. Hope you found this walkthrough valuable in building your power supply. And you find it in my Tindiestore and perhaps in other stores as well, but most probably in my Tindiestore. So if you haven't, go and buy. If you need one, if you need a power supply, go and buy one. Thanks for watching. Bye.